to the Microsoft MS-DOS 5 upgrade training.
Who remembers MS-DOS? Microsoft's early operating system that combined the beauty of a black screen with the majesty of white text. Well, it was a bit more than that, but I don't know anything about the techie side of it. What I do know though, is there were some awesome games made on DOS that I used to play repeatedly when I was a wee lad. Platformy action games, puzzle games, educational games, there were all sorts of titles to try. And most of them came as shareware, which were free, but essentially meant it was just a demo version. You'd get a couple of levels to show you how amazing a game it was, and if you wanted to play the full release, you'd have to send the developers some money in the post. What I never really played as a child though were any DOS racing games, so that's what I'm going to try out today. I've found 5 to have a bash at, I've no idea if they're any good or not, so let's see what happens. First on the list is Cisco Heat, which seems to be about racing police cars around San Francisco. I'm not entirely sure what's going on, it didn't give much of an introduction, we've just been thrown straight into the game. The first thing you notice is the absolutely banging soundtrack, performed flawlessly by the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, I believe. You start on the Golden Gate Bridge, and all the other police cars instantly race past you. We've got a lot of catching up to do, but I can't seem to get above 96 miles per hour. Surely, even in whatever year this game was made, police cars could do more than that. It turns out they can. I've only been in the low gear so far, but you can whack it into high and get up to about 170. That's more like it, I can keep up with the others now. For the most part, the roads stay straight, and you just need to avoid clattering into anything and rolling the car. It could be buildings, it could be other vehicles, it could even be innocent pedestrians standing in the middle of the road. To be honest, I think they were asking for trouble stood there. There's some hills as well to add to that authentic San Francisco feel, and every so often you have to make a 90-degree turn. However, every time I tried to carry out that outlandish manoeuvre, the game would have a fit and I'd end up crashing. I have no idea how the physics of cornering in this game are meant to work, but it seemed to be just pure luck whether I'd make it around a corner without mutilating the driver in a horrific wreck. The goal is simply to get to the end before the time limit reaches 0, preferably in first position, but I don't think that really mattered. After a few tries, I eventually managed it with 1 second to spare, and that was the end of the game. Obviously all these games are just demo versions. Some games gave away more features than others, and it seems we just got the one level here, but that was a fun start to our DOS adventure. What's next? Ooh, it's an Apogee game. They made some belters back in the day. Commander Keen, Crystal Caves, and the original Duke Nukem are all theirs, so hopefully some of that is rubbed off on this one, which is Wacky Wheels. A load of animals have driven out of the zoo and are now racing each other. It's already the best story for a racing game I've ever come across. I've chosen to race as Morris the Moose because, maybe mooses have great racing prowess? Anyway, we're in a 5-race championship, so already this freebie version is offering a lot more than Cisco Heat. Evidently zoo animals are much more generous than the police. Before we go any further, let's address the elephant in the room. There he is! But I also wanted to point out that this game is clearly a rip-off of Super Mario Kart. Animal drivers, similar looking tracks, and, like its plumber racing inspiration, it also has power-ups that you can use against the competition. Wacky Wheels has bombs you can drop, fireballs to deploy, and the main one, hedgehogs. Yep, hedgehogs are used as projectiles to send your rivals into a spin, sort of like the Koopa shells in Mario Kart. Well, exactly like the Koopa shells in fact. Despite the blatant copying of Nintendo's homework, it's actually a fun little game. The frame rate could do with being a bit smoother, but as it's DOS, I'll forgive it for that. After a season-long battle with the Tiger, we've made it to the final race where, if I win, I will be crowned the champion. Starting the last lap and the Tiger's back in front, but I pull off a stunning move over the jump to zoom into the lead, and just about hang on until the end. Morris the Moose is your new world champion. Wow, what a beautiful trophy, and a bronze tyre for some reason. The date on my high score stands out a bit. I wonder if they knew back then that people would still be playing this 26 years later. Well, funny I should say that, because it turns out it's actually been re-released and you can get it on Steam. It looks to be pretty much the same game, and it has plenty of positive reviews, so lots of people clearly have fond memories of it. While good fun, I'm not sure I would say that this was Apogee's greatest title of that era, but they did stick their name on another racing game, which is what we're moving on to now. Def Rally came out a couple of years after Wacky Wheels, and just from the name I'm expecting it to be a slight change of pace. Calling it Def Rally doesn't exactly lend itself to cute and cuddly animals. This one's also reappeared on Steam, but I'm sticking with the DOS version so we can experience these games as originally intended in all their DOSy glory. The idea of this one is you start off with a pile of junk car, enter races in order to win money and buy upgrades so you go faster. As your car gets quicker, you can enter tougher races which have more money on offer so you can get more upgrades, and you get the idea. So let's crack on, because life is short and hot, fast and deadly, and we're playing to win. Apparently. First off, we need to name our character. It should be something fierce and menacing. So let's go with Dave Destruction, yeah! Oh, meh, Dave Distr will do. We can only enter the easy races to start off with, and even so it's immediately obvious that I have the worst car out there. This isn't just a straightforward race though, this is Def Rally after all, so the cars are also armed with machine guns. That's right, you're encouraged to shoot the snot out of your opponents, and that might be our only chance to get something out of this race. You only get so many bullets though, so you need to pick your battles wisely. The other cars will shoot back as well, so you need to keep an eye on your damage meter on the left hand side. If that gets to 100%, you'll go boom, and that's no good. There we go, we've exploded one. So long, Liz Arden. Her mangled wreck will stay there for the rest of the race. We'll take second place for our first attempt, which I guess isn't too bad. We definitely need some upgrades though. Let's head to the shop, where we've got a gargantuan $870 to play with. Here we can purchase improvements to our engine, tyres and armour, make repairs, or buy a brand new car. At the moment we can just about afford some tyres and armour, and I'll repair the car as well. Perfect! Hopefully we should be a little more competitive now. Race 2 is on Hell Mountain, and we've already had a much better start. I'm out in the lead and accidentally gunning down the spectators. This is a good close battle, lots of shots being fired, and oh no! I got boxed in and shot to bits. Race over!
Race over!
Uh-oh, this is really bad. I've only got enough money left to fix 10% of my car. I've got to start the next race on 90% damage! Oh, we're finished, aren't we? I'll stay at the back and hope they blow each other up, and maybe I'll pick up a bit of money at the end. Only plan I've got, and oh, they can shoot backwards. Oh dear, that went well. With no money to make repairs, it's game over. I think spending all the money on upgrades after race 1 might have been the wrong approach, but never mind. This was a lot of fun, although it looks like it would take an awful long time to progress up the leaderboard. I had another go after this attempt, and the tracks started repeating themselves pretty quickly, although that might just be a consequence of this being the shareware version. Despite that, there's enough here to keep you entertained for a while. Anyway, I've got 2 more games to look at, so let's move on.
1, 2, 3, 4! You can get into town!
Do you remember Micro Machines, the little toy cars that could drive around a city that was hidden inside a bigger car? I had something like this when I was a Micro Machine myself, and it was hours of fun. But the franchise didn't stop at toy cars, oh no, it expanded into video games as well. And here's one of the early ones from 1993. It's a pretty simple concept. You're a toy car racing other toy cars around a track on what I'm guessing is supposed to be a tabletop, although to be honest it looks like a river of turds. And good god, these controls are horrendous. Whatever you do, you just fly off in all directions at 257,000 miles an hour. I'm not even close to keeping it on the track. Believe it or not, I really am trying. But the merest attempt to turn left or right sends your car hurtling off into oblivion, or a pencil sharpener. The AI car seems to have the driving ability of Ayrton Senna, so it's impossible to not only win, but even stay on the same lap as them. There's also no music, or sound effects of any sort. The music you're hearing is what I've added in myself to make watching this more bearable. And by the way, bonus points if you know what iconic DOS game I've borrowed this from. This is what playing Micro Machines actually sounds like. Now it does promise some noise in the full version, but to release a demo version without any sort of sound, that really is stingy. There's only one level on this, thank Christ, but even taking into account this is a shareware release, it's undoubtedly the worst racing game I've ever played. I wonder who created this abysmal anti-magnum opus. No way. Codemasters! As in the people who make the F1 games, Dirt and Grid. Wow. They've certainly got their act together over the last 27 years. I think it's probably best for everyone's sake that we leave this one buried in the past, so let's move on to our final DOS game. This one's a little bit different as it's not a racing game as such, but it does involve cars, so I've made an exception. Detroit puts you in charge of an early 20th century car manufacturer, where you get to design your own vehicles and attempt to sell them to customers across the globe. You start off by choosing where you want to base your company, and once you've given it a mature and sophisticated name, you can begin work on designing your first car. There doesn't seem to be much to it. You swipe through a variety of styles for the front, middle and rear, slap some paint on it and boom, car design done. We'll need a catchy name that has to really describe what this car is about. Judging from the design it looks slow, so let's call it the Ferrari SF1000. Next it's time to test it and we'll find out just how slow it is. "22 miles an hour, what a beast!" There's some other important tests to carry out here, such as how many people can fit in it, because there's no way you could figure that out by counting the number of seats it has or something. No, you need to force sentient crash test dummies into it in some sort of clown car scenario. Now testing is complete, it's time to start marketing it. There's all sorts of ways you can do this, such as billboards and sponsoring sporting events, but as a former print journalist myself, I feel I need to stay loyal to my medium, so we're ploughing our budget into newspapers and magazines. We can only go up in $20 increments, and as I've no idea what effect any of this has on the game, I've just put in some random amounts. However, I do feel our car would be particularly well suited to being a fashion accessory, so we should definitely prioritise that. I'm not quite sure exactly how much I want to put into fashion magazine advertising each month. Let's just keep going.
20 minutes later.
This is very slow going, although I am beginning to wonder if there's a limit.
3 hours later.
We're almost up to 10 grand, will that be where it tops out? Clearly not. I think that will do though, my mouse has worn away from all that clicking. There's some other bits and bobs you can do, like manage the research and manufacturing departments, but it's not very visually interesting to look at, so we'll gloss over it. Anyway, we've been stuck in January 1908 for too long, so let's turn the calendar and see if we're actually selling any cars. Not really the figures I was hoping for. Clearly we need to expand beyond Northern Europe. There's a big wide world out there to peddle dodgy cars to. Speaking of which, we should make another one. I couldn't be bothered to come up with any ideas myself, so I bought the design and called it the Mediocre. Looks lovely, doesn't it? Maybe this will turn the company's fortunes around. We're also going to build some more sales offices, perhaps target some untapped markets. There we go, Africa, Indonesia and a factory in Japan. That should get the money rolling in from these prosperous regions. Or not, as it would seem. Ah, it's because I didn't tell them to start selling the cars yet. Alright, I can fix that. I'd better come up with some prices. I've no idea how much money people had in 1908, so I'll just make it up. Well, for God's sake, no, I'm not making any money. In fact, I'm on the verge of going bankrupt. Maybe single-handedly propping up the fashion magazine industry wasn't the best way of going about running a car company. I don't know what I'm doing, so I'll give up now. My approach of clicking buttons and seeing what happens doesn't appear to have been overly successful. Time to wrap things up. As I said earlier, there's some terrific games on DOS that you can still play online today. There's a link in the description to the website I used, and all the games on this video are on there. That should provide you with years of entertainment. Anyway, that should about do it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Oh, by the way, the Micro Machines music was from Jazz Jackrabbit.